So I want you to imagine someone who commands, um, I don't know, like $500,000 for a single hour of their time.
That is a lot of money.
Right. A globally iconic illusionist. We're talking someone who escapes flaming boxes, vanishes helicopters in front of thousands of people, and just, orchestrates these life-threatening stunts with absolute, unwavering precision.
The absolute peak of their profession.
Exactly. Now, take that exact same untouchable global superstar and watch them become completely physically paralyzed with fear at the prospect of just walking into a neighborhood bakery to say hello.
It sounds completely made up.
It sounds like an impossible paradox. Like, how can someone who literally conquers stadiums be utterly defeated by a sidewalk?
Yeah, the disconnect there is just, it's massive.
It really is. So today, we're going to decode that massive psychological gap. We're doing a deep dive into an incredibly revealing YouTube video featuring the world-famous illusionist Princess Tenko.
Which is such a fascinating piece of media to analyze.
Oh, absolutely. And by looking at this, we are going to unpack a psychological phenomenon called stopped time. By the end of this deep dive, we're going to hold up a mirror and explore how you, yes, you listening to this right now, might actually be carrying your own unrecognized stopped time in your daily life.
I think a lot of people are going to feel very seen today.
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
Let's unpack this.
Well, the contrast is really what makes this entire situation so compelling. Because when we see high achievers, our brains naturally assume this sort of halo effect.
Right, like if they're good at one big thing, they must be good at everything.
Exactly. We assume that immense competence in a high-stakes arena just naturally bleeds over into the mundane parts of everyday life. Like, if you can negotiate a multi-million-dollar contract, surely you can ask a shopkeeper for a bottle of water, right?
Yeah, I would think so. It seems basic.
It does. But the footage of Princess Tenko in this video completely shatters that assumption. So she was participating in this location shoot, a casual date-style video with the comedian Cookie from the duo Yasei Bakudan.
Which is an incredibly low-stakes premise.
Very low stakes. And yet, the very moment she stepped out of her highly controlled, meticulously engineered stage environment and onto an unpredictable city street, the grand illusionist just vanished.
And what replaced her was frankly shocking to watch. I mean, the setup was standard production procedure. They just needed to get permission from a local shop to film inside.
Just a basic appointment-making scenario.
Right. Her task was simply to walk up to the shop, go inside, and politely ask the shopkeeper if they could bring the cameras in. But her reaction wasn't just, typical camera shyness or mild social awkwardness.
Not at all.
She was so overwhelmed by this mundane interaction that she actually reached out and held the comedian Cookie's hand just to approach the building.
Which is, we really need to break down the mechanics of that specific reaction because it tells us absolutely everything about her internal state in that moment.
Yeah, please do, because it looks so, I don't know, visceral.
That's the perfect word for it. When you watch that footage, you aren't looking at an adult woman experiencing mild hesitation. You are witnessing a complete nervous system hijack.
Wow. A hijack.
Yes. Her body language, the desperate need for physical tethering, that is an involuntary physiological response. When a human being feels fundamentally unsafe in an environment where they lack a mental map, the amygdala fires off.
And that's the brain's threat detection center, right?
Exactly. It's the alarm bell. And for a young child, the immediate instinct to regulate that overwhelming threat response is to physically attach to a stronger, more capable figure.
Oh, wow. So she was literally reverting.
She was. She wasn't playing a character for laughs. Her nervous system literally reverted to a state of seeking safety in the exact way a preschooler would on, their first day of school.
I was trying to wrap my head around this massive disconnect, and the best way I can visualize it is by thinking of an astronaut.
Oh, I like this. Go on.
So imagine someone who has strapped themselves to a rocket, launched into the vacuum of space, and fearlessly performed spacewalks while orbiting the Earth at thousands of miles an hour.
They've mastered the most complex, lethal environment imaginable.
Right, because they have a team of thousands, endless simulations, and mission control in their ear, constantly telling them what to do. But then they come back to Earth, and they are utterly terrified to ride a child's plastic tricycle in their own driveway.
Because they've never done it.
Exactly. They are terrified because they entirely skipped that developmental step. They went straight to the spaceship. The tricycle represents an unscripted, unsimulated variable. There's no mission control for a tricycle.
That analogy hits at the absolute core of the psychology here. The spaceship represents an environment of supreme control. I mean, every single variable is accounted for.
Just like your stage shows.
Right. Magic and grand illusions are the ultimate exercise in controlling the environment, so the audience only sees exactly what you want them to see.
And nothing else.
Exactly. The tricycle, or in Tenko's case, the neighborhood shop, represents the messy, unpredictable reality of human interaction. And to understand why she has zero tolerance for that unpredictability, we have to examine the environment that forged her.
Which is where things get really intense.
Yeah, this introduces a terrifying concept from the source material, which is called the humanity contract.
I mean, just the phrase humanity contract sounds like something straight out of a dystopian novel.
It really does. It's chilling.
It implies that your fundamental nature as a human being is something to be negotiated, restricted, and, like, legally bound.
Yeah,
And the details of her background absolutely support that.
they do. From a very young age, she was placed under this environment overseen by her master with rules that were on an illegal level of strictness.
The most jarring one being an uncompromising order, literally, quote, do not smile outside.
Which is, you have to think about the neurological and developmental implications of that single rule.
Because it's not just about looking serious, right?
No, not at all. A smile is not just an aesthetic expression. It is our most fundamental evolutionary tool for social regulation.
How so?
Well, when a child smiles at a stranger and the stranger smiles back, this incredibly complex feedback loop occurs. The brain releases oxytocin and dopamine.
The feel-good chemicals.
Right. And that reinforces the idea that the outside world is safe, that other humans are approachable, and that social connection is a positive experience. It's called the facial feedback hypothesis in action.
So our faces aren't just showing what we feel, they're actually making us feel it.
Exactly. Our facial expressions don't just reflect our emotions, they actually dictate our internal emotional state and our social bonding.
So by forbidding her to smile outside, her handlers were essentially severing her primary mechanism for establishing safety in the world.
Yes. They systematically starved her of social feedback.
They were cutting the wire between her and the rest of humanity. That is so sad.
It is. When you are forbidden from using the basic tools of human connection, you do not develop the neural pathways required to navigate unscripted social environments.
Wow.
And sure, this intense grooming led to her commanding that staggering $500,000 an hour, but the psychological cost was absolute isolation.
Which leads us right to the core of this deep dive.
Right, this is the engine behind Stop Time. The human brain doesn't just naturally secrete emotional maturity as you age. It requires friction.
Friction, like conflict.
Like micro-conflicts. True psychological resilience is built on a foundation of experiencing small, safe failures in everyday interactions.
Oh, okay. Give me an example.
So a child says something silly, the group laughs, the child feels a momentary spike of embarrassment, but then they realize they aren't going to be exiled from the tribe.
They survive the cringe.
Exactly. The nervous system learns that social fumbles are survivable. But because she was denied that, her time effectively stopped.
Let me play devil's advocate here, though, because I'm sure some listeners are thinking, well, a lot of highly successful people have bizarre, hyper-restricted childhoods.
That's true, they do.
Like, what about elite Olympic gymnasts or chess prodigies who are drilling 12 hours a day from the age of 4? They miss out on normal teenage milestones, they have insane discipline, and they are heavily controlled by coaches.
Right, but there's a key distinction there.
Yeah, because we don't typically see an Olympic gymnast paralyzed at the thought of entering a convenience store. What is the specific difference between a prodigy's discipline and this humanity contract?
The difference really lies in the distinction between physical isolation and emotional suppression.
Okay, unpack that.
So an Olympic gymnast might spend 10 hours a day in a gym, but within that gym, they are still engaging in a spectrum of human experiences.
Right.
They cry out of frustration, they laugh with their teammates, they get angry at their coach, they flirt, they gossip. Their focus is narrow, yes, but their emotional feedback loops are still completely intact.
Ah, I see. So they're still acting like kids, just in a very strict setting.
Exactly. The environment Tenko was placed in actively suppressed those feedback loops. Do not smile outside is an active, aggressive suppression of the human experience itself.
It's not just practice hard, it's stop being human.
Right. Her training didn't just refine her technical skills, it walled off her emotional development. Because she was denied those microfailures and everyday interactions, that specific part of her psyche, the part that handles everyday human connection, froze.
It just hit pause.
It literally stopped in time at the age she was when that intense contract began.
That makes a lot of sense. The gymnast is learning a specific physical skill, but Tenko was essentially being trained not to be a regular person,
Exactly.
which completely explains why, as an adult, she lacks the basic operating system for casual life. And this brings us to another fascinating moment in the video.
The restaurant scene.
Yes, we see this stop time manifest not just as fear, but as an incredibly rigid defense mechanism. So they go to an okonomiyaki restaurant.
Which, for anyone who hasn't been, is a very casual setting, where you often cook this savory pancake right at your table.
Right, you're adding your own sauces and toppings. It is inherently messy and unstructured.
The absolute antithesis of a meticulously rehearsed stage illusion.
Exactly that. So in the video, she is playfully asked to practice putting the sauce on the okonomiyaki, and her reaction is fascinating.
She completely shuts it down.
She doesn't just decline, she flat out refuses and says, quote, "If I can't do it perfectly, I don't want to do it."
Which is such a telling
I
statement.
mean, it really is. Now, my immediate thought was to relate this to learning a new language. When I try to speak a new language, there's a huge part of me that wants to just stay silent until I can speak with a flawless accent, because I absolutely hate the vulnerability of sounding like a beginner.
Nobody likes looking foolish.
Right. Or someone refusing to try coding because they don't want to write bad code. But we usually frame perfectionism as a virtue, right? We see it as a sign of high standards and elite ambition. So why is it a pathology in this case?
Well, society often mischaracterizes perfectionism as this relentless drive for excellence. But in the context of stopped time and severe emotional suppression, perfectionism is actually an atrophied muscle.
An atrophied muscle. How so?
Think of it like someone who has spent their entire life doing nothing but bicep curls. Their biceps are incredibly strong, and that represents her flawless stage persona.
Okay, the magic shows.
Right. But the stabilizing muscles required to simply stand upright and balance representing her everyday social skills, those have completely withered away.
Oh, wow.
Perfectionism isn't a sign of strength here. It is the only muscle she has left to flex to keep herself from falling over. Saying, if I can't do it perfectly, I won't do it is an elaborate, exhausting avoidance strategy.
So it isn't about having high culinary standards for the okonomiyaki sauce.
Not at all.
It is entirely about avoiding the vulnerability of the messy middle.
Yes. The messy middle is where all neuroplasticity happens. It's where we learn, adapt, and grow. But for someone whose entire self-worth, identity, and multi-million-dollar livelihood are tethered to the illusion of absolute flawlessness.
And the messy middle is terrifying.
Exactly. It's perceived by the brain not as a learning opportunity, but as a fatal threat. If her handlers taught her that any deviation from perfection resulted in severe punishment or the loss of her identity, her brain coded making a mistake as dangerous.
So the prospect of clumsily squirting sauce on a pancake and having someone laugh at her, that triggers a profound fear of ridicule and shame.
It's life or death to her nervous system.
That reframes her entire demeanor. The perfectionism is essentially a heady armor. If you refuse to engage in anything unless you are already a master at it, you successfully protect yourself from ever being judged as inadequate.
Precisely. It's a shield.
But carrying that armor all the time has to be incredibly isolating. I mean, if you never let anyone see you try, fail, and be messy, you can never really let anyone know who you actually are.
And that profound isolation leads directly to the next crucial behavioral pattern we observed in the footage. Because human beings are biologically hardwired for connection.
We need it to survive.
We do. And if we cannot connect through genuine, messy, vulnerable, shared experiences, the psyche will attempt to manufacture connection through other, safer means.
Which brings us to the Confucius ramen story.
Yes, this part is so revealing.
During the video, while she was visibly stressed and shut down during the mundane tasks, there was this stark transition when she started telling a specific story.
She completely lit up.
She did. She became highly animated, almost glowing, as she recounted how she was personally taught the proper way to eat ramen by a direct descendant of Confucius.
I mean, that is a staggering piece of name-dropping.
It really is, and I think the cynical, surface-level reaction from a viewer is an immediate eye roll.
Oh, for sure.
It looks like pure, unfiltered arrogance. It looks like a wealthy, out-of-touch celebrity flexing her VIP status to remind a comedian that she operates on a higher plane of existence, like, you eat normal ramen, I eat ramen with the bloodline of ancient philosophers.
That's exactly how it comes across on the surface.
Right. But if we apply the lens of stopped time and that heavy armor of perfectionism, what is actually happening in her brain during that story?
We have to look at the psychology of status buffering.
Status buffering. Okay.
Yeah. When an individual lacks secure attachment, when they were denied the ability to bond with caregivers or peers through authentic emotional exchange, they often substitute parasocial or status-based ties to feel safe.
Interesting.
For someone terrified of exposing their true, vulnerable self, talking about who they are is a total minefield. But talking about who they know, that is a perfectly safe, pre-scripted narrative.
Because it controls the variables again.
Precisely. The okonomiyaki sauce is dynamic. It can splatter. She can look foolish in real time. But the Confucius story is static. It has already happened. She is the hero of the story, and it reinforces her value.
Wow.
And it's vital to understand that she isn't necessarily seeking validation that she's superior. She's desperately seeking the reassurance that she is tethered to the human race.
She just wants to belong.
Exactly. The humanity contract isolated her from normal bonds. The $500,000 an hour lifestyle creates an impenetrable bubble. By dropping these massive names, she is essentially broadcasting a distress signal saying, look, I belong somewhere. Important people acknowledge my existence.
I'm connected to the world, even if I don't know how to physically interact with it.
Yes, exactly that.
Wow. That completely flips the script. The arrogance is actually a symptom of profound loneliness. It's not, I am better than you. It's, please see that I exist and have value, because I don't know how to prove it by just being a normal person sitting across from you.
It's heartbreaking when you look at it that way.
It really is.
Yeah.
Loneliness isn't just a lack of people around you. It's the lack of being truly seen. She is surrounded by millions of fans, but no one sees the woman terrified of the bakery.
And this is really the pivot point of our analysis today, where we transition from a fascinating case study of a celebrity into the psychological reality of the listener.
Right, because this applies to all of us.
It does, because while the scale of Princess Tenko's life is extraordinary, the underlying mechanisms of stop time, the fear of the messy middle, and the defensive armor of perfectionism are intensely common.
So let's hold that mirror up,
Yeah.
because I guarantee almost everyone listening right now does not have a master enforcing an illegal humanity contract.
Probably not.
And they probably aren't raking in $500,000 an hour either. But the psychological paralysis we're discussing, the anxiety, the desperate need to control how others perceive you, the terror of starting something new that resonates deeply with so many people.
It absolutely does.
So how does stop time happen to everyday people living everyday lives?
Well, it happens in much quieter but equally impactful ways. Stop time occurs anytime a child's safe emotional development is persistently interrupted or invalidated.
Okay, give me a real-world example.
Consider a household where negative emotions are strictly forbidden. A child gets angry or sad, and the parent immediately shuts it down with, stop crying, you have nothing to cry about, or don't raise your voice in this house.
I think a lot of people grew up hearing exactly that.
Very common. The child learns that their natural emotional responses are dangerous and actually threaten their attachment to their caregiver.
So the part of their brain that learns how to process and express sadness or anger, it just stops developing. They hit pause on that emotional skill set at like age 6.
Exactly. Or consider the child who is severely punished for mundane mistakes. If spilling a glass of milk results in explosive rage from a parent, the child's nervous system learns that the world is a zero-tolerance environment.
Wow. Yeah.
Their ability to take risks, to be creative, or to just be imperfect completely freezes. But perhaps the most common and insidious cause of everyday stop time is what psychologists refer to as the good child syndrome.
Oof. I think a lot of listeners are going to feel very seen or perhaps very uncomfortable with this one. We were talking about the kid who always gets straight A's, never causes trouble, and basically acts like a miniature adult.
On paper, they are the perfect child.
Right. But underneath, a very dark psychological transaction is taking place.
It is. The good child often develops in an environment that is chaotic, perhaps due to a messy divorce, an addicted parent, or just emotionally immature caregivers.
They realize the adults aren't driving the bus.
Exactly. The child intuitively realizes that if they are messy, needy, or complicated, the family system will collapse. So they learn that love and safety are highly conditional on their ability to keep the peace.
They aren't just being good. They are actively managing the emotional state of the adults around them.
They're performing intense emotional labor.
I know so many adults who operate exactly like this, but what does that look like when that good child turns 30 or 40? If their time stopped when they were 8 years old, trying to manage their parents' moods, What are the symptoms in their adult life today?
Symptoms are exhausting, honestly. It manifests as a hypervigilant need to constantly read the room.
Oh, interesting.
A lot of adults think their ability to walk into a meeting or a party and instantly know what everyone is feeling is a superpower. Like, oh, I just have high emotional intelligence.
I've definitely heard people say that about themselves.
But often it's not a superpower, it's a trauma response.
Yeah.
It is the deeply ingrained survival mechanism of the 8-year-old scanning the room to see if dad is angry today.
So they're constantly absorbing everyone else's emotional state at the expense of their own comfort.
Yes. And it also manifests as severe perfectionism paralysis.
Like the okonomiyaki sauce.
Exactly. Are you terrified to start a new project, write a book, or change careers because you know you won't be brilliant at it on day one?
That fear of the messy middle again.
Right. Or do you have an intense need to rely on a specific person, a partner, or a friend to feel safe in unfamiliar social settings, almost like you need them to hold your hand, literally or metaphorically?
Just like Tenko with the comedian.
Yes. If you are nodding along as you listen to this, it is vital to understand that these aren't character flaws or weird personality quirks. They are echoes. They are your inner psychology reacting to an unhealed era where your safe growth was interrupted.
Seeing yourself in that terrified reaction at the bakery isn't a sign of weakness. Recognizing that a part of your heart or a specific emotional muscle stopped growing years ago is actually an incredibly profound moment of self-awareness.
It's the first step.
But once we recognize it, what is the protocol? Because I know if my instinct when I realize I have this stop time is to just aggressively fix it. Like, I'm going to go out and intentionally fail at a dozen things today to prove to my brain that I won't die.
Just dive right into the deep end.
Right. Full exposure therapy. Is that the right approach to unstopping the clock?
Honestly, that aggressive approach is a very common instinct, especially for high achievers. But throwing yourself into massive failure is a form of flooding, and it can actually backfire spectacularly.
Really? Why is that?
Because if you force a nervous system that is already terrified of failure into a massive, humiliating mistake, you risk confirming the amygdala's worst fears. You actually re-traumatize the system.
Oh, so you make the armor even thicker.
Exactly. The psychological literature suggests a much gentler approach. The mechanism for healing stop time relies on titration.
Titration, like in chemistry, right? Adding a tiny controlled drop of the solution at a time.
Precisely, you microdose imperfection.
I love that phrase, microdose imperfection.
The cure for perfectionist paralysis doesn't require quitting your job or blowing up your life. It begins with giving yourself permission to be a little bit messy in incredibly low-stakes environments.
Just dipping a toe in.
Right. It's about recognizing the terrified, stopped part of yourself without shame.
So instead of trying to be terrible at your job to prove a point, you go to a restaurant and you purposely mispronounce a menu item.
Yes. Perfect example.
Or you send an email with a typo to a trusted friend and practice just sitting with the discomfort of them seeing it.
Exactly. You allow yourself to be the beginner. You make the mess. You squirt the okonomiyaki sauce awkwardly on the table. You watch the other person's reaction, and you let your brain physically record the fact that you are still safe.
No one screamed.
Exactly. The world didn't end. By accumulating thousands of these tiny, safe micro-failures, you slowly build the neural pathways that were denied to you in childhood. You basically restart the clock.
You essentially take that inner child by the hand, walk them into the messy, mundane world, and show them that it's okay to just be a normal, flawed human being.
That's beautifully said. That's exactly it.
What an incredible journey we've been on during this deep dive. I mean, we started with something that seemed so trivial, a celebrity struggling on a YouTube date, and we used it to completely deconstruct the myth of the flawless high achiever.
We examined the devastating neurological impact of the humanity contract and how the active suppression of social feedback loops creates a physiological terror of the unscripted world.
We reframed perfectionism, moving away from the idea that it's a virtuous shield of high standards and recognizing it as an atrophied muscle, a desperate avoidance strategy to hide from the vulnerability of the messy middle.
And we decoded the psychology of status buffering, realizing that name-dropping and arrogance are often just distress signals from a profoundly isolated, stopped psyche.
And most importantly, we mapped those extreme celebrity behaviors onto the everyday experiences of the good child, validating the hidden trauma of transactional love and the exhausting reality of chronic hypervigilance.
It really fundamentally changes how you view the people around you, especially the ones who seem the most put together.
It absolutely does. But before we sign off, we want to leave you, the listener, with one final lingering thought to explore on your own.
We've spent this hour analyzing how Princess Tenko's greatest outward successes, her absolute stage control, her massive contracts, her flawless illusions, were actually the source of her deepest internal paralysis.
The things that made her untouchable were the exact things keeping her trapped.
Exactly. So look at your own life. Examine your own defenses. What if the area where you consider yourself the most perfect, the most meticulously put together, or the most successful, what if that is actually the exact place where your heart stopped growing years ago?
Wow. What a provocative question to end on. If your armor is shining the absolute brightest in one specific spot, maybe that is the spot you are most terrified of letting the world touch.
Something to really think about?
Definitely. Well, we want to enthusiastically thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. We really hope this conversation has given you some new psychological tools, a bit of grace for your own anxieties, and maybe the courage to embrace a little bit of the messy middle today. Until next time, remember that sometimes the bravest, most monumental thing you can do isn't conquering a stadium or being flawless. Sometimes it's just walking up to a normal shop, letting yourself be a little nervous, and saying hello.